celebrated in the U.S. Hopefully you got some good time off. We are going to bring up Kevin to start today. Here he is. Awesome. So everyone can check the community call agenda at helium.foundation / community -call. And we're going to start with an MCC update from MCC member Kevin. Then we're going to go into probably 30 minutes on HIP 74, which was made available for your review last night, US time. But it is up right now, and there's a new channel to talk about it. I will let them give the description of it, but this is a change to the mobile POC algorithm. And since we don't have the mobile sub-DAO set up, we are going to vote on this as a community. And so, everyone that's an HNT holder hopefully has some questions about this, and we'll take time to read HIP 74. After that, we're going to just give a quick update on HIP 72 and the progress that author Paul Dinocourt has made. And then I do have a open request that everyone can help me get an update from HIP 64 authors. I can't get any response. So, but I would really love to get an update on HIP 64 and see how the Wi-Fi DABA team's doing. And then we'll just give some announcements in the end. So, yeah, Kevin, well, hey, let me check with Jamie. Jamie, are we all good on recording? Jamie, you're muted. Your audio was good to start, Jamie, but now I don't hear you. And then also, if you do have any questions or chat as we're going, we have the community call chat, so please post anything in there. Jamie's typing. Let me give it a sec. I can't talk, but the recording is going. Awesome. Okay. Okay, Kevin, take it away.
Can you hear me good?
I can hear you, yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm one of the newest MCC voted in members. My name's Kevin Baumgartner. Just a little about myself. I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm a telecommunications technician here in Canada for a Canadian telco, which is also a 5G MNO provider operator here in Canada. I've been in the telco industry for going on 18 years since graduating my technology post-secondary school stuff. When I got into crypto a few years ago, I was all about the proof of work GPU mining back in 2017, and did that for a few years. It got me more interested in projects that had real utility, which basically got me going into Helium. I didn't get my first hotspot going till about summer of 2021, and since then I've deployed multiple hotspots in around my city that are working absolutely fantastic. My nickname's Bomber, same with kind of like the last name. If anyone wants to find me on social media or Discord, or has seen me in the Discord and stuff, I go by the username Bomber Crypto 2.0. So you can feel free to add me or follow me on Twitter, which is at BomberYXE. I'm also one of the mods for Nick's Crystal King's weekly State of the Network YouTube channel. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you check that out every week on Friday. So you can catch me there in the chat, and I might have to actually pop in there on one of his videos maybe and spread some more of the Helium love over the next while here. But it's nice to be a part of the Helium group, and thanks for letting me introduce myself.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So I'm going to ask you some questions too. So what have you been doing with the MCC since you joined? What's happened?
I'm just new to it the last little bit, but I've been keeping in touch with everyone with the MCC as this whole process of bringing me on has happened. I actually started my first thread with the MCC in regards to the the dual mining seed studio request of hardware So I kind of did a deep dive into that and presented that to the MCC. So we're in talks with some of that stuff. Also, just basically getting my feet wet, especially with the talks we're doing about the SCP, the Secure Concentrator Card, which are ongoing talks.
Yeah, nice. Can you tell us more about the deep dive you did? What is that
The
dual
dual
miner?
mining
What is that?
affects. It's more Seed Studios did a request that they wanted to build a product, a dual hotspot Helium slash Flux node, and so a lot of people are looking at using their Helium hotspot for dual mining, and so looking at. I just more did a deep dive for everyone, kind of explaining what, let's say, example, the Flux node is, and where we fall the MCC group to look at things. It was just more getting everyone up to speed of what it is like that would be coming onto the hotspot node wise and what everyone's been requesting.
Yeah, interesting. So
Filling
okay,
everybody in on basically what the dual mining is or what Flux node is that would be going on to possibly a dual mine Helium hotspot.
yeah, interesting. Okay, so is it something you're gonna review in like the next MCC meeting, or does this kind of go through like an educational thing for a bit longer and then it might go to the
That's
whole
kind of
group?
where it is now, the educational thing for everyone to kind of understand what's the request that's being asked and kind of go from there and then just have more discussions about it and stuff.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
And as
Flux
things come
node.
to light, we'll let everybody know kind of where things are at.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. And then where can people find that information again?
We haven't really, we're just more discussing it right now. I think maybe Sophie and Jeremy will probably put some information out on the net. We'll also discuss it on the next MCC call in a couple weeks. More of that stuff will come out. We're just more deep diving it and understanding what the request is from manufacturers on what they're wanting to do. And just double check, again, it's more of a security thing. And that's kind of the aspect of MCC is just double checking the security thing. If there's no issues in regards to compromising the Helium hotspot and everything.
Okay. Okay, cool. I could ask you more questions, but I'll let you go. I'll let you go
Sure.
with this one. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Kevin. Anything else you want to tell the group?
No, I'm looking forward to chatting with people, and my DMs are open if anyone wants to reach out and have any discussions about helium and hotspots and what I do in the telco industry in Canada and stuff. As we're a 5G provider up here, and the knowledge I have up here in regards to that. Anybody has any questions at all, they can always reach out to me on Twitter.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. Okay. Now we're going to bring up HIP 74 authors. I see a few people, but if you can just request to speak, we will bring you up. Yoshka. Let's see. Anyone else?
I'm
Miyoshka and
here.
Zero. Okay, good. I don't know either of your real names. I just know Miyoshka and Zero Tweets. So
I'm
if you guys
Boris.
also, okay, Boris, yeah, if you guys also want to introduce yourselves before you start talking about HIP 74, I think that would be great for me at least.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Boris Rinsky. I'm GM of Wireless at Nova Labs. Formerly, I was CEO at Freedom Fi. So I historically been involved in pretty much everything that is now the Helium 5G initiative, and continue to stay involved now following the Freedom Fi acquisition by Nova Labs.
Awesome, Boris. I do know who you are, so it's just
Okay.
yeah, it's
And
good
it's
to
not
put
for
a
you. It's not for
username.
you. It's for everybody else. So
Yeah,
perhaps
good.
maybe some people don't know. So
Good, yeah.
and Sasha, you want to introduce yourself quickly? So Sasha and I have been working pretty closely on this HIP 74. So she'll be helping me take you guys through it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to be here. I'm Sasha. I'm product manager on the mobile network at Nova Labs.
Cool. Okay, so we have about half an hour to talk about this new HIP that covers this concept of modeled coverage. What I'll do is I'll sort of verbally take everybody through the HIP that's been published and available on GitHub, and try to explain it to the best of my ability. And then maybe we can dedicate a little bit of time for questions and kind of open discussion. And I'll also go and hang out in the 5G CBRS channel and the HIP 74 channel afterwards so that we can continue discussion offline. I think it's very important that everybody involved with the Helium community, and particularly with the 5G sub-DAO, invests time into understanding what this HIP is about, because it does introduce some, what I think, very positive but also profound changes to the algorithm for rewarding CBRS radios for proof of coverage. So without further ado, HIP 74. So this is probably the first phase of a series of HIPs that we will be publishing that actually touches on rewarding the CBRS radios for the actual coverage that they provide. So we launched initially in Genesis phase, and the point of it was, we'll just reward people for being able to set the radios up, give or take. And the idea was that we had the radio type multiplier, and depending on the type of radio that you would set up, you would get, different type of rewards. And really the test was like, can you set up the radio properly? Can you send us the pictures so that we can CPI test it and basically put it online? And from day one, we were quite vocal that, this is going to keep evolving because what we ultimately want is creating useful coverage versus just, people setting up a bunch of radios, potentially in their closet. So the first couple of steps that we took towards making sure that the setups are useful is we've introduced the kind of recurring heartbeat tests, where we're testing basically that the radio is up continuously. And second was the backhaul test, which ensures that the radio is connected to an adequate source of internet. But we never touched really the part of, does your radio actually, cover any useful area or any area at all? So this is the first HIP where we start tackling that problem. Now, this is not a replacement for mappers that many of you have heard about, but it's kind of the first step towards it. The original thinking that we had back in the day, I think, when we were just kind of chatting and brainstorming proof of coverage with the community, was that, hey, we'll have these mappers and also the network users with the phones, and they'll kind of walk around and validate the coverage and map the coverage. Now, what's pretty obvious is that it's going to take us some time before there is a sufficient density of mappers out there to really objectively sort of create a coverage map of all of the radios that we have. But luckily, there are other kind of simpler ways to model the coverage that the radio actually is creating. We today already have when the radio gets certified by CPI, the information about the exact location of the radio. We know the specifics of the spectrum grant that the radio got from the spectrum access system. And we know exactly the type of antenna that the radio has and the direction of that antenna. So using that information, if you complement it with topographic data around the the radio's location and the clutter data, such as trees, buildings, any other obstructions around the radio, you can actually model a pretty accurate picture of what the radio really covers. So, and this is exactly what this HIP is about. So we are introducing a new entity called Obstruction Data Oracle. That entity is basically an aggregation of data sets that we have from external parties that Foundation basically is collecting and keeping about the general topographic data and clutter data for everywhere in the US. And by combining that with the location, the power of the power grant that the radio has gotten from the spectrum access system and its direction, we create a model, and based on that model, we calculate what radio should get what types of rewards. Again, as I mentioned, this is not going to be a replacement to mappers. Mappers are going to come in later, and in our view, mappers will be sort of like the enforcers of this modeled coverage. So we'll have modeled coverage, and down the road, we'll introduce the concept of mapped coverage, which is basically the coverage that's been modeled but also enforced by the mappers. But modeled coverage will take us very, very, very far ahead of the current sort of approach that we have with the radio type multipliers. And motivation for this obviously is that, as we've always discussed, we want to create a network that is useful. The first step towards creating a network that is useful is to account for what radio covers and what it doesn't, versus just stupidly rewarding each radio based on like how expensive it is, basically. And that's why we're launching this. Stakeholders. So this is only affecting people that have deployed CBRS radios. Obviously, there's no effect at all on the IoT LoRa POC, but the effect on the people that have deployed the CBRS radios is that we are now really going to be accounting for like where your radio deployed and based on clutter data, what it's actually covering. And depending on where it is, you may either see a significant increase in rewards or a decline in rewards. So if you are, trying to basically farm radios and you put 20 of them, on your roof and pointed them into the trees or walls or whatever, then your rewards will drop. If you have a real deployment covering large area that is, fairly uncluttered, you have a lot of hexes covering, then you will get more. So how is this going to work, and then what are the mechanics? I think it's a lot easier always to kind of like read through the HIP to understand the mechanics than just listen to me talking, but I'll try to cover verbally at high level how the mechanics gonna work. So first, we still sticking to the H3 index for mapping out the world. We are going to be using resolution 12 hexes. So for everything, the world is going to be divided into a whole bunch of res 12 hexes. The big change is going to be that if you compare it to like IoT world, we are not using hexes to just identify where the radio is. We're using hexes to see which areas the radio covers. So if you look at the hip, first of all, you can see kind of like a picture of, how dramatic the resolution changes compared to the traditional LoRa IoT resolution that's historically been used. But the second is that, if you look at how things work in LoRa with VH3 index, it's typically you have a hex. Inside of that hex, there is, one or more hotspots, and that's how it's used. Hexes, there's no, they're very, very, very rough approximation of what the actual coverage is. Now, in this case here, we are going to be using the hexes as really kind of like the map of what the radio really covers. And then the hex is going to be effectively like the unit that we'll be using to figure out how to reward a radio. So right now we have two types of radios, outdoor radios and indoor radios. So for outdoor radios, it will work as follows. So let's say you have, a radio 430H that you've put somewhere on the roof. We get the location of that radio, the obstruction data oracle, based on the location, actually calculates the location and number of the res12 hexes that your radio covers. And for each hex, it will return the signal strength that your radio produces in each of the res12 hexes. And for each of the hexes, depending on the signal strength, your radio will earn a certain number of reward coverage points, as we call them. We'll have 3 levels, or 4 levels rather, high, medium, low, and none. So high signal strength, medium signal strength, low signal strength, and none. And depending on the signal strength at each hex, you will earn 16, 8, 4, or 0 points for each of the hexes. For the indoor radios, the general idea is going to be the same, but because the clutter data for the indoor radios is not very broadly available, like if you put it in an office building, like we don't really know very well if the office building has concrete walls or wood walls or what. That's just generally like you could find ways to get some of that data, but it's not really very reliable nowadays still. So for the indoor radios, the algorithm is generally going to be the same, but instead of relying on fine detailed obstruction data oracle information, we kind of have for now a stub template where we assume that in any hex where the indoor radio is deployed, the signal strength is high, and for any adjacent hex, the signal strength is low. So you will, as an indoor radio operator, will earn 16 coverage points for the res12 hex that you're in, and 4 coverage points for all adjacent res12 hexes. And this is based on us having taken the indoor radios that we currently have certified on the Helium network and testing it at a variety of different locations. And then we kind of try to err on the side of generosity for the indoor radios with this template that we've come up with. But the general framework for how the calculation is done is kind of similar to the outdoor radios, except that we don't have like first-hand obstruction data oracle information. And the rewards between all of the radios are going to be calculated basically as a function of all of these points that have been earned by the radios. So at the end of the reward period, which is going to be 24 hours still, so that doesn't change, we will take a look at all of the mobile that should be issued across all radios for the period. We'll take a look at all of the points earned. We will arrive at the amount of mobile per point. And then for each radio, depending on the number of points that you've earned, you will get the, consequent amount of mobile. Now, one other important kind of question that I want to tackle before we go into questions is, what happens if there is multiple radios covering the same hex? So if there's multiple radios covering the same hex, we will take a look at which 5 radios have currently the strongest signal at that particular hex, and we'll reward those radios according to the tiers. So if there's only one radio, one radio will get rewarded 16 points. If there is, 5 radios all have excellent signal, then all 5 radios will get rewarded 16 points. If there is a total of, 10 radios, and of those 3 have strong signal, 2 have medium signal, and other 5 have low signal, then the first 3 with strong will get rewarded with a strong signal reward point amounts of 16. 2 will get rewarded with 8 points, and the rest will just not get rewarded because the 5 radios per hex threshold has been met. Examples of all of these calculations and visualizations are posted in the HIP. One other thing that I would encourage you to look at is just some pictures. There is, in the HIP, you can see what the radio that posted on the roof of our office, the 430H, what the coverage map for that looks like in terms of the rest 12 hexes. And last thing is that, I know this is like a fairly significant change. So you don't need to freak out because there's going to be a phase-in period. The first step of the phase-in period is us actually launching a mobile explorer where everybody who has deployed the radio today will be able to actually see what your radio is doing, what hexes it covers, and estimate how that affects your rewards for some period of time before the actual changes get rolled out to the rewards. So we're going to phase that in. We're going to allow people to kind of play around with the radios, potentially move the radios around if you've deployed radios in a bad location. There's going to be time for you to adjust before the rewards are actually affected. All right, so I'll pause here. If we have time, perhaps tackle any questions that people have.
Yeah, thank you, Boris. I've asked people to put questions in the community call chat, and we will take questions up. I think there's a few already, but I want to summarize what you said because you said a lot, and it's all great. So basically, we're moving from rewarding the hotspot for just existing and having a heartbeat and being set up, right, to no, now we're going to reward you based on, how the quality of your coverage and the strength of the coverage that you're providing. And we're essentially measuring that with this hex 12 kind of standard, right? This res 12 hex standard. Is that right? Yes,
that's correct.
Okay, awesome. I think that seems pretty simple and actually fairly easy. I asked people on the call how many mobile hotspot owners are here. I think there's 5. So, or there's 5 at least right now that put a thumbs up to this. So I would love to know if any of you specifically have questions around this, but then we'll just start taking these. So give me a second, Boris, as I read these. Wondering what HIP 74, this is a bit confusing. How about a variable for reducing rewards in locations where there is already sufficient coverage by MNOs and an outdoor radio is not needed / useful as a radio in a rather than being in a useful location? Does that question make sense?
Yes, it's a good question. and we actually touched on it in the POC roadmap blog, I think, that has been published by the foundation, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, the first step for us is to move away from just rewarding radios for existing and towards rewarding radios for the actual coverage they provide. And then a lot of interesting questions come in into like, okay, well, like what is useful coverage versus not useful coverage, right? So I can cover a lot of hexes in the field somewhere, in whatever, Wyoming, where there's no people, and earn a lot of mobile, versus covering less hexes, maybe like in downtown Manhattan, where there's a lot of people, or with this question specifically alluding to like, some places there's already a lot of coverage and some places there isn't. So how do you actually differentiate the hexes where the coverage is useful versus not? There's going to be a couple of hips coming down the pipe that, I don't want to dwell on now, but they'll specifically tackle that as well. And in short order, in the next few months, we're gonna start like tackling specifically like the usefulness of the hexes versus just the existence of the hexes.
Okay. Okay, another question for you, Boris. How are certain hexes given greater weighting for reward distribution?
So yeah, this is kind of from the same pile. All the hexes are given the same rating for reward distribution right now. The only difference is based on the signal strength of your radio. So when your radio, is radiating signal, it will cover X number of hexes with strong signal, X number of hexes with medium, and certain number with low. So there's going to be different rewards points for high, medium, low, but there's not yet going to be difference between like valuable hexes versus not valuable hexes. That will come shortly after.
Mm-hmm. Do we know what that number is? You just said X number of hexes for a strong signal, or are we still kind of like simulating what that looks like in the field?
So there is no universal answer for that. This is a function of where your radio is and where it's pointing.
Okay.
And this is the whole point of the abstraction data oracle is. So
Okay.
depending on where your radio is, we'll calculate the hexes for your specific radio. And it can be anywhere from like, 1 hex to, dozens of
Okay.
hexes.
Okay, that makes more sense. So yeah, so if my radio is blocked by a tree or something, I'm gonna get less hexes, and my signal strength's gonna be
Exactly.
it's not gonna radiate as strong. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Any other questions from folks? We have someone named Gateholder that would like to come and speak. I'd like to know if you have a question you'd like to ask verbally. That's totally fine. We can bring you up to do that. Maybe just give me a little sign that that's what you want to do. And Sasha, if you have anything you'd like to add, please go ahead while we wait for more questions.
No, I think everything has been covered greatly. Thank you, Boris.
Awesome. We have some people typing. We also will have there is a questions form for this linked in the community call agenda. So if you don't have any questions about this now, feel free to put questions in there, and then the team behind the HIP is monitoring that, and definitely we'll get back to your questions. Question came in from Kuzan. Could you guys share more info about spot mappers? I'm not sure if this is a question you can answer, but I know that the spot mapper, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they're still very much on the roadmap. We'll have mappers. We'll have a HIP out. I think shortly that talks about how spot mappers will validate the modeled coverage. So you know, this is not canceling spot mappers, if that's the question. Or you know, the difference is that when we started talking about mappers first, we were thinking of mappers being the only tool for painting the coverage picture. With this, mappers are evolving into a tool that really validates the modeled coverage versus just purely painting, you know, from zero, from scratch, the coverage picture of a radio. But they remain important, and we'll have the spot mappers available probably first quarter next year. So that's what I can say about the spot mappers.
Okay. I think we can go into how spot mappers work at a different time, Kuzan, too. Question for you too, Boris. How confident can we be that the data such as radio height is provided correctly? And is there a way that we're validating that data today? Or have a
Yeah,
future
so
plans?
yeah. So this is again a good question. This is why the mappers will become important down the line. Right now, we validate it to the best of our ability in that when you register CBRS radio, you have to state accurate data about, you know, location, height, etc. The location is, you know, we know that from the GPS within the radio. The height, you'll specify it and send the picture to us. If you lie about it, it's not only a, you know, lying to us, it's also an FCC violation that's, you know, punishable by fines. So we validate it to the best of our ability based on the pictures that we see. But that's about it.
Can you explain what is the FCC fine? What is that?
Death penalty.
It's a penalty.
One
Okay.
word. Death penalty. Kill a person.
It's a death
I
penalty.
mean, I don't know exactly what I mean. So I don't know exactly what the fine is for, but it's not little. So if you basically if you consciously violating the FCC regulations around, you know, what radios you use to radiate what frequencies, which lying about the height of the CBRS radio squarely falls into that category. There is, you know, like a schedule of fines, maybe even jail time if you do it too egregiously.
Oh
I
wow.
don't know exactly what, but I'm not a lawyer. But it's
Well, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but I hope no one's lying about it. You'll get the FCC death penalty. Yeah, hash code Abai says, generally speaking, don't try to cheat the FCC, friends. That's funny. Okay, another question actually. I think this is related. When will Freedom Fi enable 436H users to register multiple antennas to max coverage of the radio? I'm assuming, I think this is mobile related.
We don't have that currently on the roadmap. So we're talking about having two antennas and two separate, you know, instead of aggregating the two carriers, have two separate antennas and point things in different directions. I don't know if I have a good answer for that, but maybe I'll check with Joey and the team, and I can share some wisdom Discord channel.
Okay. Yeah, maybe Joey can answer that.
Hello? Mic check?
Hi.
Guys, so the question is about the 436H dual carrier mode. We've decided to focus on carrier aggregation, which doubles the throughput that the cell reduces. So if you deploy with the dual carrier setup, you half your throughput for each of the cells. And as it's 2022 going into 2023, having a single carrier LTE deployment just doesn't produce the user experience that we're looking for. So fourth 36 is going to stick with carrier aggregation, similar to all of the indoor radios and the other outdoor radios.
Okay. Okay, thank you, JPad. One other question from Ed, and then I think we'll go to other things. Are there any mobile grants being offered? This is super expensive equipment, so what's the plan to fund education in this space particularly? Yeah, what's the plan to fund education in this space? And this is sort of related to the HIP. This might be more of a.
I think that's more of a foundation question
Yeah,
than
more of a
a Nova
foundation
Labs
question,
question, because we don't, as Nova, give out mobile grants. So, anybody on the foundation side wants to tackle it?
Yeah.
I'll let that happen.
I can't answer that right now, Ed. I just don't know the answer, but let me get back to you on that. Okay. Okay, anyone else that has questions about this? There is a questions form in the community call agenda. And then you can also, of course, go into HIP 74 and ask questions there. Or, of course, Boris said he'll be hanging out in the 5G CBRS channel as well. And we'll just keep checking those for your questions. There is a blog going out about HIP 74 today as well. So hopefully that can answer any more questions and just see the HIP, in a new language. So thank you, Boris and Sasha, for your time. I think that was great. And of course, hopefully people will reach out to you both with more questions. Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Last things on our agenda is I am requesting from the community to push HIP 64 to give us an update about the Wi-Fi sub-DAO. I really want to have them come on the community call next month. But if anyone is, well connected with that team, please reach out and let them know we want an update, and hopefully we can move the Wi-Fi sub-DAO forward in some way. So that is my request to community today. And then we have HIP 62 that's still being worked through. This is the secure concentrator HIP, which for those that don't know, makes an open source spec for a new secure concentrator card. It's totally optional. So if you have a hotspot today, you'll be able to kind of open that hotspot, purchase this card, add the card into the hotspot yourself. Again, totally optional, but it'll give us more secure data at the hardware level, of the hotspot. And so if we can trust the data better, we're saying that it should be, rewarded with a small amount, right? Because we're getting more secure, more trusted data from the device. So I think it allocates a 25% increase in rewards. Again, this is totally optional. You do not have to add a secure concentrator card, but it gives us better data. So hopefully it's something that you might want to add to your hotspot. But again, the HIP is for an open source spec. And so hopefully other people will take this, other manufacturers might take this and start to manufacture it. The author, Paul, also has a company called Enlightened Systems, and he is going to be the first producer of this card too. So update on this is we have the MCC looking at this HIP, and Paul's going to present to the MCC, I believe, this month. He already did a demo with some of the MCC members. So if you want to see that demo, it is a video that needs to be edited by me, but just so that it's starting and stopping in the right places. But Paul gives a great demo of this, and we're actually going to have some foundation members, notably Sophie and Jeremy, Germ, of course. They're going to do a test on the secure concentrator card themselves, and so they're getting those in their personhood now, and that's kind of the update. I don't know if Paul is on the call if he wants to say anything else, but that should be it for now. And any other announcements we have, if you want to give an announcement, I really would love to give the time for the community to say what they're doing, or just let people know anything upcoming in their worlds. Please request to speak and we'll bring you up, or you can put it in the community call chat. Only other thing from Foundation is a protocol report is going to come out tomorrow. That'll be on our site, and we'll of course post announcements about that. It's just an overview of the last year, and I believe this will be an annual thing for us going forward. So yeah, I think that is it. Anything? Let's see. Okay, thanks, Paul. Great summary. Good. Quarterly report. Sorry, I've been corrected. It's going to be, the protocol report is going to be a quarterly report. Jamie, do you have any dad jokes to end with if your mic is working? Or we'll let everyone go if they don't have any announcements they want to give out themselves.
Let's see. Do you read me?
Yes, we do.
Oh, what a Christmas miracle. I don't have anything telecom related, which is always my favorite. Oh, hey Valerie, what kind of vest should you wear in the fall?
I don't know.
It's a harvest.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
It's almost winter. So, update my material.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. Ed said, why do cows walk in their hooves? Because they lactose. Yeah, Ashko said, oof.
Yeah, Ed, you hired. You're in.
Okay, I think we're devolving. Okay.
And
Okay,
despite my mic not working at the top, I have a successful recording that we will be posting in all the
Awesome.
usual places. So check out the community call Google Doc for some links to the audio and the fake video.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week, and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Valerie.